things that people have offered for why adult intelligence might change, and he reanalyzes the data to see how well the explanations hold up. Salthouse, as you might gather from some of your readings, tends to be pretty solidly on the pessimistic side about cognitive aging. Among other things, sort of holds to the, there's so much smoke about decline, there must be some fire. But he's also pretty intellectually candid. What he's doing in most of these is he's looking at partial correlations, which offer you a mathematical way of saying if this other factor was an important influence, how much of the first factor that you're interested in would be explained away. And so in all of these cases, your first factor is age. And they say for education, for health, and for perceptual speed, what would, mathematically, taking these out of the age and intelligence relationship, do to that relationship. Another way of thinking about it, say like an example for this one, is if everybody, regardless of age, had the same level of education, then what would the correlation between age and intelligence be?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Did you say this is Salthouse?
Yeah.
We didn't read this, did we?
No.
I mean, this doesn't look familiar.
No.
Okay.
This is bonus information.
No, I'm just making sure because I...
No, you're right. And so, like so many things that we're looking at, it kind of varies by test. This is all based on Webster Adult Intelligence Scale subtests. It can be studied by Barrett and Morrison going back a number of years. And so, for vocabulary and information, if you statistically control for educational levels, you actually turn either near zero effects or maybe slightly negative effects into small but positive effects. So that this would say that if young people and old people have the same level of education, then older people tend to do better on vocabulary tests and better on information tests. Comprehension kind of stays close to the line. Arithmetic sort of stays close to the line. And the rest of them, to varying degrees, what Salthouse would say about all these others is that although you reduce the correlation when you control for education, it's still negative, and it doesn't go away, and in some cases it doesn't affect things much. Now, these are all, for all of these, are performance tasks. Maybe you don't expect education to have a big effect, maybe you do.
I know I'm asking a lot of questions.
Sure.
What is digit span? Is it just like the span of
How
your
many-
hand? What does this mean?
How many digits can you remember?
Oh, I thought it meant like how far could you open your hand?
But yes,
All right.
it's like I give you a string of numbers of increasing length, and it's what's the longest string you can remember, and it's usually done both forwards and backwards. You actually get different results.
Thank
Somebody over here?
Oh, I was just going to say, are different don't different regions of the brain develop and atrophy at different times in the lifespan, so that you would see atrophy in some areas, but not in others? And so if the brain region that's controlling vocabulary comprehension, like if you have, like those, if they cluster in a certain region, versus other ones that cluster in a different region, if maybe you would just see different times.
I got stuck on the atrophy in different orders. What I think I understand from listening to Tuck Finch and some of our other biogerontologists is that the evidence for general brain atrophy has largely disappeared. They no longer really believe in neuron loss is a major thing of normal aging. What they think happened early on, I was talking about what went along with that disastrous cross-section of curve in age and intelligence was loss of gross brain weight. They now think that what was going on with that was that there were a lot of Alzheimer's brains in there. And people weren't making the distinction between Alzheimer's and normal aging. And that if you actually, if you're sure you have healthy brains, you don't see gross anatomy changes in brain structure in that way. There's still discussion about white matter changes, the supporting cellular system around neurons, and even more so about paring down the synaptic connections. But even those, as far as I can tell, even those are somewhat controversial or somewhat inconsistent these days. And also actually both neuron loss and synaptic connection paring down in other contexts is seen as a positive thing. There are phases of child development in some models in neuroscience of learning where it's actually getting rid of connections that you don't need is what happens as you learn and as you develop. So we've been a little simplistic, I think, on the aging side and assuming that just because things are getting smaller or fewer, things have to be getting worse. But the bigger issue is, what do we know for sure that happens in normal brains? And there's also been just some odd kind of science has come with fads and conventional wisdom, just like everything else. And one shift I've seen in my postdoc career is that we used to think a lot in terms of it, brain changes and changes in normal aging in terms of right and left hemisphere changes. Because there's sort of a rough correspondence of these performance tests, object assembly, pitch arrangement, so they tend to be right hemisphere sort of tasks. Vocabulary and information are more left hemisphere. So come along the lines of your question, 80s, and so there was a lot of focus, well, again, fairly inconsistent actually on the brain side. But there should be right hemisphere atrophy that would correspond to these age effects that were kind of right hemisphere functions. And then the last decade or so, they've given up the right-left thing and gone to the front-back thing. So now all the focus is on presumed frontal lobe atrophy and a whole constellation of effects, which actually mostly don't correlate with one another. Being grounded in the psychometric stuff and factor analysis, one of the things I find disturbing about all the discussion about executive functioning is a different task and test